on Sirius XM channel 127, Monday, March 22nd. I'm Dino Pidala, here to be your MBFF. Hope you had a good weekend. There's so many issues to discuss. I was thinking about over the weekend. So many things we want to achieve. Raising the minimum wage, a public option on health care on our way to Medicare for all, DC statehood, which was talked about today in Congress, criminal justice reform, and the list goes on. But here's the thing. There's one thing standing in the way of all of that, the filibuster. And if we don't end the filibuster, none of this will happen, because there will not be 10 Republicans in the Senate who will vote for anything that President Biden and Democrats want, because even the most reasonable ones at the end of the day are about power. And even if you got one or two to come over, you're not going to get the 10 you need. And I wanted to touch on, and we'll go through it on my show in more detail, a little bit of the history of the filibuster, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Not misintentioned, not with any kind of malice, but I hear people say what the filibuster is about and what it's not. I have people email me with questions about it, which I really enjoy, and I can answer those. I'm happy to hear that. People email me, well, it's not in the Constitution. I don't see a federal law. They're absolutely right. The filibuster is not in our Constitution. It's not at all codified by federal law. It began by accident. Arguably, really the first genesis has to do with Aaron Burr when he was vice president after he shot Alexander Hamilton. I'm not kidding. He was president of the Senate as vice president and suggested having the Senate get rid of a limitation on debates and having the ending a debate by just a majority vote, which they had in the House rule. From there, it took decades before it became actually known as the filibuster. It was not at all, there's this misinformation. It was about protecting the rights of minorities. In the beginning, I don't mean minorities in America, I mean the minority power in the Senate, because no one cared about minorities in America at the time we're talking about. That wasn't the case at all. That evolved over time. And the filibuster wasn't just used for preventing civil rights legislation, because the early use of the filibuster, and it really came into use in the mid-1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, there was really no debates about civil rights then, to be blunt, in this country. They had to do with some progressives were using it to prevent corporate bailouts. The famous movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, is about that very thing. And Jimmy Stewart does a filibuster on that kind of very issue. And that's true. That really did happen. And it was in 1917, the first time they actually said there was a way to end a filibuster, and that was by a vote of 67 senators. Over time, though, the filibuster did get used to prevent civil rights laws from being enacted. That happened more in the 50s and 60s, most famously the Civil Rights Act, the longest use of the filibuster in the history of our Senate. And from there, it became from 67 votes to needing 60 votes, and reformed again by first the Democrats, Harry Reid, to make it easier for President Obama to confirm his appointments for judges, not Supreme Court justices. Mitch McConnell got rid of that. But the bottom line is, the history is the history, whatever you want to see in it. If you want to see it as a relic of Jim Crow, like President Obama called it, and I agree that it is used that way from the 50s on, to something about protecting the rights of minority power, you can say that if you want, but the reality is, the last time Democrats had control of the House, the Senate, and the White House was over 10 years ago. It was 2009, 2010. We've not had it since. This is a once-in-a-generation moment. And if you're concerned about raising the minimum wage, if you want to see health care reformed, if you want to see DC become a state, if you want to see climate change addressed, any issue bluntly, except for infrastructure, which you could get through budget reconciliation, which allows a majority vote, anything else, the only way is ending the filibuster. There's no other way. It's impossible. There's zero way to make this happen. And, President Biden already just a week ago was on record saying he's for now reforming the filibuster, going back to the old days of making senators stand up and speak until they're exhausted. And that's as long as the filibuster could go. And then another person in that party could continue the filibuster, but it would, in a matter of days or weeks, would end. And then you can vote on the bills. He wants to do that. That's a positive step. But without getting rid of it, we can't achieve anything. And that's what the Republican Party is about. They're the party of no. They're the party of not just status quo, going backwards. If you care about voting rights, you've got to get rid of the filibuster. It's going on right now in Georgia, and the list goes on. So we'll talk about that in much more detail on my show. But this is really a once-in-a-generation opportunity for Democrats. And if they do not do all they can. And I understand Senator Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema have concerns about getting rid of the filibuster, but I'm sure we could find an accommodation that allows a reform on certain issues, even carving out a civil rights exception or a voting rights exception to pass the For the People Act, something along those lines. Without that, we can't deliver for the American people. And then we're no different than the Republicans in terms of selling points for 2022. We lose the House and we lose the Senate, and that's what the GOP is about. They don't care about delivering for the American people. They care about just stopping Democrats and getting power back. So we'll talk about more of my shows live 6 to 9, channel 127, Progress Channel. If you don't subscribe to SiriusXM, go to the website. There's free trials. Check it out. Then listen to the show. Call and be a part of our family. As I say every night, if you want progress, stay active. Thanks for tuning in tonight's preview of the Dino